The air smelled like rain and fresh paint, the scent of new beginnings. I stood in the driveway, hands on my hips, staring at the house Sarah and I had dreamed about for years. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We'd moved to escape the noise, the constant rules, the endless HOA meetings, the neighbor who once filed a complaint because our garden hose was visible from the street. So when we found this place, an outside HOA jurisdiction, we didn't think twice. The sky was overcast, a soft rumble of thunder in the distance when I heard it. Sharp, deliberate clicks of high heels on pavement. "Excuse me." The voice was firm, shrill, and carried that tone, the one that demanded attention but not respect. I turned. A woman in her 50s was marching toward me, a clipboard clutched like a shield. Her hair was too tightly curled, her smile too forced. The kind of person who looked like she'd scolded someone before breakfast. "Yes," I said, keeping my tone polite. "You can't move in here," she said. "Not without HOA authorization?" I blinked. "HOA authorization?" "That's right," she said proudly. "I'm the president of the Meadow Ridge Homeowners Association. You're violating community policy by occupying this property without prior approval." I had to fight a grin. "Ma'am, I think there's a mistake. This property isn't part of Meadow Ridge." Our realtor confirmed a no HOA. Her jaw stiffened. "Every property within 3 blocks falls under our rules. We maintain order here." She said order like it was sacred scripture. I tried to stay calm. "Well, that's interesting because my deed says otherwise." She frowned. "Deeds can be wrong." Behind me, Sarah came out from the garage carrying a box. "Everything okay, honey?" "Yeah," I said. "Just a misunderstanding." Karen, and yes, she introduced herself proudly as Karen Simmons, HOA president, shot Sarah a look, then turned back to me. "You'll be hearing from us," she said, tapping the clipboard. "I'll issue a notice." She turned and walked away, the sound of her heels fading down the street. When she was gone, Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Who was that?" "Apparently," I said, "the self-appointed ruler of our new neighborhood." Sarah chuckled. "Lucky us." But even as we laughed, I felt a twinge of unease. There was something about her tone, that quiet confidence of someone who'd gotten their way for too long. And I knew this wouldn't be the last time I saw her. 2 mornings later, I heard a knock on the door. Not a friendly knock, sharp, insistent, like someone collecting a debt. When I opened it, there she was again. Karen, clipboard, sunglasses, and this time she wasn't smiling. "I told you," she said, her tone clipped. "You can't live here without HOA clearance. You're already in violation." I leaned against the doorframe. "Karen, we've been over this. This property isn't in your HOA. It's outside the boundary." She raised the clipboard like a badge. "I don't know what your realtor told you, but I have the bylaws right here. Section 4B. All properties connected by the Meadow Ridge Road are under HOA jurisdiction." I couldn't help but chuckle. That's creative. But the county map says otherwise. Her lips tightened. "You think you can just move in and ignore community standards? We keep this neighborhood beautiful. We don't tolerate outsiders who think they're above the rules." Sarah stepped up beside me, her expression calm but firm. "Ma'am, there's no legal standing behind your claim. I'd suggest you leave before this becomes harassment." Karen blinked, caught off guard by Sarah's tone. "And who exactly are you?" "Sarah," my wife said evenly. "Law enforcement." For the first time, I saw fear flicker across Karen's face, but it vanished as quickly as it came. She straightened her posture and forced a laugh. "Well, no need to get defensive. I'm just doing my duty." She handed me a folded letter, the notice she promised, and left without another word. When I opened it, I couldn't believe what I saw. It was a violation notice, complete with a fake HOA seal and a list of fines totaling $750. The reasons? Unapproved color of front door, unauthorized trash bin placement, failure to register with HOA committee. Sarah snorted. "She actually made this up." I shook my head. Either she's delusional or dangerous. We decided to ignore it. But that evening, as I took out the trash, I saw her again, standing across the street watching our house. The porch light caught her face, and for a split second she smiled. Not the friendly kind, the kind that says you'll regret this. That night, Sarah found a piece of paper taped to the mailbox. Cut-out magazine letters formed the message, "You don't belong here." I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't about rules anymore. It was personal. Sarah folded the note and sighed. She's testing boundaries. Next, she'll cross one. I looked back at the house, our house, and made a silent promise. We weren't going anywhere. It started with footsteps. At first, I thought I imagined them. Slow, dragging sounds outside our window around midnight. Sarah was asleep, so I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her, and looked through the blinds. There she was, Karen, standing in our yard. She held a flashlight, sweeping it across our porch, the mailbox, the driveway, like an officer conducting an inspection. She didn't even flinch when the light caught her own face. I stepped onto the porch. "Karen, what are you doing on my property?" She turned slowly, her expression cold. "Checking for violations." My pulse pounded. "At midnight?" "Community enforcement doesn't have hours," she said flatly. "You've ignored multiple notices." "Those fake notices you made up?" I snapped. "You're trespassing. Leave before I call the police." Her lips twisted into something between a smile and a snarl. "You can't threaten me. I am the law here." Sarah appeared behind me, gunmetal badge glinting faintly in her hand. "No," she said. "I am." That was the first time Karen hesitated. Her eyes darted to the badge, then back to Sarah's face, searching for weakness. When she found none, she took a step back. "This isn't over," she hissed. "People like you ruin neighborhoods." Then she turned and walked off, her flashlight beam bouncing wildly as she disappeared into the dark. The next morning, we found the evidence of her visit. Boot prints in the dirt right across the property line. Sarah took pictures, filed a report, and contacted the county sheriff. But before the deputies could even visit, Karen struck again. She posted flyers on every mailbox in the cul-de-sac, bold red letters screaming, "Beware, dangerous couple in Meadow Ridge." Posing as homeowners, armed and unstable. Sarah tore one down, trembling with anger. "She's crossing into criminal harassment." I clenched my fists. "She wants to break us." "Then she doesn't know who she's dealing with," Sarah said. That evening, we set up a camera by the porch. Around 1 a.m., the motion alert buzzed on my phone. I opened the feed. Karen again. But this time she wasn't alone. 2 men stood beside her, both in plain clothes holding flashlights. They looked uncomfortable, like they didn't want to be there. Karen's voice carried through the microphone. "This is the house. They're not authorized residents. Check their plates." One of the men muttered, "Ma'am, this isn't an official investigation." Karen spun on him. "Do it, or I'll report you to the HOA president." I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, but Sarah stopped me. "No, let her talk. Let the camera record everything." We watched as Karen argued with the men for several minutes before storming off again, shouting about violations and neighborhood purity. The next morning, we handed the footage to the sheriff. He watched the video silently, then sighed. "You're not the first to report her. Karen Wilkins, former HOA president, removed 2 years ago for harassment and misuse of funds." I blinked. "Removed? Then why is she still—" "She doesn't take no for an answer," he interrupted. "We've issued warnings before, but she's persistent." Sarah crossed her arms. "If she sets foot on our property again, I want a restraining order." The sheriff nodded. "Understood." When we got home, Sarah sat quietly for a long time, staring at the window. "She's not just crazy," she said. "She's obsessed. And obsessed people don't stop until they get what they want." I looked out at the quiet cul-de-sac, the trimmed hedges, the clean driveways, all so perfect, so peaceful. But beneath that calm surface, something poisonous had taken root. Karen wasn't guarding the neighborhood. She was trying to own it. 3 days passed without a sign of Karen. No flyers, no late-night footsteps, no glares from across the street. The silence felt wrong, like the calm before a storm. Sarah was cautious but hopeful. Maybe the sheriff's visit scared her off, but I wasn't convinced. People like Karen didn't just stop. They planned. I was right. On Friday morning, I woke up to the sound of a truck engine idling outside. When I stepped onto the porch, I froze. A tow truck was parked in front of our driveway, and behind it, the clipboard in hand, was Karen. She was smiling again. "What are you doing?" I shouted. She waved the clipboard triumphantly. "Removing an unregistered vehicle. HOA regulations prohibit overnight parking of commercial trucks on residential driveways." I laughed, incredulous. "That's my moving truck, Karen. It's scheduled for pickup today." "Not anymore," she said. It's in violation. The driver looked uneasy. Ma'am, you sure this is legit? I didn't get any ticket number. Karen thrust the clipboard toward him. You have your order. Do your job. I stormed down the steps. Touch that truck and I'll sue you both into next week. That's when Sarah came out in her sheriff's hoodie, still half asleep, holding her phone. The moment she saw the tow truck, her jaw tightened. Is she seriously doing this again? Karen turned toward her with mock surprise. The law enforcement wife. I was just explaining the community regulations. You might want to teach your husband how things work here. Sarah crossed her arms. Karen, step away from the truck now. Karen tilted her head. Or what? You'll arrest me for enforcing standards? I'll arrest you for harassment and trespassing, Sarah replied coolly. I've already filed 2 reports. One more and you're in cuffs. The tow driver looked from Sarah to me, visibly sweating. Sir, I don't want trouble. She said she runs the HOA. She doesn't, I cut in. She hasn't for 2 years. Karen's face twisted. That's a lie. Those charges were political. I built this neighborhood, me. She stepped closer, voice rising. You don't understand what it's like. People used to respect the rules. The lawns were perfect. The mailboxes were straight. No one parked junk trucks in driveways. Sarah's tone softened, but her eyes were steel. And now no one respects you. Because you turned control into obsession. For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy between us, broken only by the rumble of the idling tow truck. Then Karen snapped. She grabbed a rock from the flower bed and hurled it at the moving truck's window. The shatter echoed down the cul-de-sac. The driver cursed, jumped out, and backed away. Karen, I shouted. That's enough. She turned to me, eyes wild, tears streaking her cheeks. You ruined everything. This was my street. Sarah had already drawn her phone and started recording. You just vandalized private property on camera. Congratulations, that's a felony. For the first time, Karen seemed to register what she'd done. Her breathing slowed. Her hands trembled. No, you don't get it. I was just keeping order. The wail of sirens in the distance made her freeze. I could see it, that mix of fear and pride battling behind her eyes. She looked around at the neighbors gathering in doorways, whispering. The same people she once ruled were now staring at her like a stranger. When the sheriff's patrol car pulled up, she didn't resist. She just stood there motionless as the deputy gently took her arm and read her rights. Sarah handed him the phone. Video evidence. She's been escalating for weeks, the deputy nodded. We'll take it from here. Karen looked up at me one last time as they led her away. There was no anger left and just emptiness. I was trying to protect this place, she whispered. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. That night, the neighborhood felt eerily quiet again. Sarah and I sat on the porch, the glow of the street lamp flickering across the driveway. She leaned her head against my shoulder. You think it's over? I nodded slowly. Yeah, but she's the kind who'll haunt the neighborhood long after she's gone. Sarah smiled faintly. Then let's make sure the story's told right. I looked out at the street, imagining Karen's clipboard, her rules, her fake sense of order, all crumbling like dust. And for the first time since we'd moved in, I finally felt like the house was truly ours. The neighborhood was quiet again, almost unnervingly so. The kind of quiet that makes you listen to your own heartbeat. Sarah and I sat on the porch, sipping coffee in the early morning light. The moving boxes were unpacked, the lawn trimmed, and for the first time in weeks, it felt like we might actually enjoy the peace we'd been craving, but there was still a lingering tension in the air, the kind left behind by someone who refuses to accept defeat. I can't believe it's finally over, I said, stretching my arms. Over? Sarah replied, her eyes scanning the street. You think Karen Wilkins is ever over? I frowned. I guess not. But at least she's gone, and with the sheriff's report and video evidence, there's a record now. Sarah nodded, but her expression was thoughtful. There's something else we need to understand. Why her obsession? Why this neighborhood? I leaned back, thinking about the past few weeks. The late-night trespassing, the fake notices, the rock through the truck window. All of it pointed to one thing. Karen wasn't just obsessed with rules. She was obsessed with control over the illusion of perfection she thought she had built. And then it hit me. The fence. The one that ran along the edge of our property. When we first moved in, it had seemed like a normal decorative fence. But Sarah had noticed something unusual the other night while walking the dog. Faint scratches along the bottom, nearly hidden. "Look at this," she said, crouching by the fence. "These marks." She was trying to dig under it. She was coming onto our property secretly for weeks. I knelt beside her, examining the ground. There were tiny footprints consistent with someone small enough to squeeze through the gap if they tried. Karen had been testing our boundaries, literally. "That's creepy," I muttered. She wasn't just watching us. She was scouting, planning. Sarah's eyes darkened. "We've been lucky it didn't escalate further." But it proved she wasn't just insane, she was strategic. Every move she made was calculated to intimidate us. I ran a hand through my hair. "We need to make sure she doesn't come back." Sarah stood and looked down the street. "It's not just about us. I think Karen believed she had some moral right to the whole cul-de-sac. She thought she was the guardian of some perfect suburban world, and anyone who tried to live outside her rules threatened that world." I shivered. "So what now?" "We can't live in fear forever." Sarah smiled faintly. "We don't have to. That fence, these cameras, the sheriff's reports, that's our line. She can't cross it anymore. And as long as we stand together, she has no power here." A soft breeze rustled the leaves. The morning sun glinted off the freshly cut lawns and the glimmering mailboxes. Our neighborhood looked serene, almost like nothing had happened. But I knew better. Karen's obsession, her delusions of authority, her desperate need to control, all of it was behind us. But the lessons remained. We couldn't rely on assumptions. We couldn't ignore warning signs. And above all, we couldn't let anyone make us feel like outsiders in our own home. I turned to Sarah. "Ready to finally enjoy this house?" She nodded, taking my hand. "We earned it." As we walked back inside, I glanced once more at the fence. It wasn't just a barrier of wood. It was a symbol of boundaries, of resilience, of standing firm. And in that moment, I realized something important. The HOA, the rules, even Karen's madness, none of it had the power we gave it. The power was ours, and ours alone. For the first time in weeks, the air felt light, free, and as the sun rose over the cul-de-sac, I knew this chapter of our lives, the chapter of fear, confrontation, and obsession, had finally ended. But the story of HOA Soul, our story, was just beginning.